How's it going, YouTube? My name is LBNinja7, your resident Mistweaver Monk and favorite WoW healing YouTuber. And guys, as we inch closer toward 10.2, we have another week of PTR notes that have just been data mined and they are now implemented into the PTR. I will load that up in a second and start showing you some things, but let's go ahead and kick it off. We have a couple of changes, actually quite a few changes coming to this week's build of the PTR. Now, I'm only going to run through all the healers and I'll actually add in like a bonus addition with Windwalker, you'll see, just because there's a funny change coming there. But we have a couple of quality life improvements coming to some healer classes, but then also some power readjustments and some nerfs, some buffs. So stay tuned, we're going to go through all of that today, and let's go ahead and kick it off with the tier sets. Now, the only healer tier set that's seeing any change is the Resto Shaman. Now, if you watch one of my most recent videos, I kind of talked about how they aren't like gaining anything amazing. They aren't gaining anything that's like making them super flashy healers, but their tier set was very powerful. And powerful in a kind of unique way. So they had a problem, or I guess it was a problem for the developers, where their force set was performing very well in raid. They were splitting up a lot of riptides, duplicating riptides, and it was just adding up to a very good healing. They were doing very good throughput in raid, but then their 2 set was just performing very well in Mythic Plus. You know, Resto Shaman has always just historically been seen as a Mythic Plus spec, and they do very good spot healing, and this 2 set was just performing very well in that sense. So how did they kind of adjust that? Well, let's start with the 4-piece. Now this buff, it will only have a 5% chance to duplicate any riptides if you have your tidal reservoir that your 2 set applies and a riptide on a target. It will only have a 5% chance to duplicate, so you're going to see a lot less duplication. However, this buff, this tidal reservoir buff, is going to last longer. It's going to last 10 to 15 seconds, but it's going to kind of siphon some of that less of that riptide healing. It used to be 20% of all your riptide healing was kind of funneled into that one person. Now it's going to be, or I guess whoever all has the buff, now it's only going to be 15%. So in Mythic Plus, this was very good because they're spot healing all the time. They're always going to have these buffs on their allies, and especially because it was duplicating those riptides pretty often. Although Riptide's not like, you know, absurd in Mythic Plus, they were just seeing a lot of good throughput from this because it was a short buff, but since they spot heal so often, they could just reapply it or refresh it and then just keep those riptides flowing and then getting 20% of all riptide healing. If you have that on like 3 members, you were seeing quite a bit of healing funneled into each person. It was just a nice little bonus hot on top of the riptide. Now in raid, like I said, although these buffs are going to last longer, so you're going to see more instances of more chances for it to proc and to spread, you're going to see it happen still less often because they're reducing that number for 5%. So all in all, these changes aren't like absurd. They aren't going to like break the class or make it less enjoyable, but they are kind of just like readjusting where the power lies in their tier set. Still, honestly, to me, in my opinion, one of the most impressive tier sets for all the healers. I mean, it's not, like I said, anything flashy, but it goes with their playstyle that they want to be doing and performs well. This adds good throughput to their playstyle they already had in all forms of content. And then, like I said, we're going to talk about only one change happening to a non-healer spec today, and that's the Windwalker bonus. Look, I have to point this out. It's so funny. Their melee attacks, which is kind of the part that turns off every melee or Windwalker in the game, they don't care about their melee attacks since they're channeling like spinning crane kicks or fists of fury a lot. However, they were getting a buff called Ebon Toes, which is an awesome buff name. I mean, come on, Ebon Toes? That's so sick. And then they changed it to Blackout Reinforcement. Look, I guess they just couldn't handle the memes. I know Limit Max plays Windwalker, and I'm pretty sure I haven't watched Max's stuff in a long time, but I'm pretty sure he would meme on Ebon Toes. But literally just changing the buff name and improving that buff is just hilarious to me. And look, even in their 4 set, it's not even mentioned anymore. Why would they? Okay, look, you had to think, especially the monk community, as a member of that community, I can guarantee you that if you call it Ebon Toes, it's gonna be memed. Come on now. All right, so with those changes, the tier set changes out of the way, let's go and hop into this long list of changes coming to some of the healer specs. And let's start off with Discipline. Now we know Discipline is seeing the most changes coming into 10.2, but with those changes, there comes a need to just balance and tweak and adjust, move things around. And especially with Priest, the Priest community, you have a very vocal community, you have a large community to where you can kind of like identify those things very easily. Well, so as Discipline, their Penance, which as you know is just a very powerful ability, can be used for healing, but never is. It's mostly used for damage to then cleave healing with Atonement. Penance, you can buff it a lot with a bunch of talents, or you could just wait for Blizzard to buff it, and that's what is happening here. You see there, they're adjusting the number of Penance and how much it does in damage or in healing, but mostly it's going to be damage. The damage number is the most used one. So just adding a little bit more oomph to Penance. And then I'm going to skip down and then come back. But also their new major cooldown, Ultimate Penitence, I know I said that wrong in my last video, is also seeing a similar buff. So you're going to do more damage, only slightly, and then do more healing to all the allies that are hit with the bolts. So all in all, just adding more oomph to one of their most marquee abilities. So I am a huge fan of this. I'm excited to see how it performs because we know that they have adjusted their atonement numbers back down. So adding more power into something like Penance is really cool. And also to this ability, if you have not seen it yet, it is such a sick ability. I'm so excited. Now they have a lot of changes happening to their Shadow Covenant and their two little fiends that they summon. These have basically, this has been the biggest change in the Discipline playstyle recently in 10.2 in the PTR, and they're basically just trying to simplify it and give it more of an identity. So if you don't know, Shadow Covenant was kind of what marked their squid build. They would basically become this squid, this dark squid, and it buffed all their shadow damage, but it was just a button that you would have to press during your ramp so that you could then buff all of your spells that do damage. It was just awkward, so they kind of tacked it on to your Shadow Fiend or your Mindbender. So now Shadow Fiend and Mindbender now give you Shadow Covenant. That was what they did, what they basically changed in 10.2, but it's kind of awkward because Shadow Fiend and Mindbender behave differently. So they kind of are balancing that. So now your Mindbender, which let's go and pull up the Priest, your Mindbender, which is this final talent, the Keystone talent, it behaves differently. So basically your Shadow Fiend, which is now not a talent, your Shadow Fiend is a 3-minute cooldown and it hits harder than your Mindbender, but your Mindbender is a 1-minute cooldown, and like I said, it doesn't hit as hard, but it's a 1-minute cooldown. And they've also adjusted Shadow Covenant to kind of like also work like that. So now your Mindbender will only buff, you'll see that your shadow spells by 20% while active, because like I said, it's on a 1-minute cooldown, which then can be brought down even further because your smites, your mind blasts, your penances will reduce the cooldown of your Mindbender by 2 seconds. But as you see here, it's bugged, it still says 4 seconds. But the change here is your smites, your mind blast, your penances will reduce your Mindbender, which is the 1-minute cooldown, by 2 seconds, and then it will reduce your 3-minute cooldown if you only take Shadow Fiend by 4 seconds. And then like I said, Shadow Fiend is going to be slightly more powerful while it's out, but it's a longer cooldown. And then Mindbender is slightly less powerful, but a much shorter cooldown. However, they've made it to where you can get those cooldowns, you can kind of control those cooldowns a little bit more. But then also they've adjusted the power from Shadow Covenant that you as the priest gets accordingly. And then they have also added, as you know, if you just took your Mindbender, if you went all the way to Mindbender, they have been rearranging these talents now. This is where we land. Void Summoner is the one that reduces the cooldown. This is the one that adds a slash to your Mindbender. Now, if you remember, I'm pretty sure this used to be below the Mindbender. You had to first take the Mindbender and then take the buffs to it. Now it is kind of, it's before it. So now you can take Inescapable Torment before you've taken Mindbender. So they added Shadow Fiend to that. So now you can give your Shadow Fiend a slash whenever you use your Power Word Death or Mind Blast. So very cool. Honestly, just making these two buttons less confusing and making their talents, obviously when they make major changes with this, they're most likely not going to get it right the first time. So all in all, a big fan to how they've kind of simplified this and rearranged it into a more intuitive arrangement. So all in all, pretty good stuff coming to Disc Priest. All right, this is post-editing Chris. Sorry, I totally skipped over Resto Druid, so sorry for the change in scenery, but they are getting some pretty nice changes, or a pretty nice change, I should say. Cenarius Guidance, which is the talent node right under your Incarn or your Convoke, it either buffs your Convoke or buffs your Tree of Life, whichever one you take above it. It has this little passive cooldown reduction on your Tree of Life if you take that. So if you take Incarn Tree of Life, every time your Grove Guardians, which are your new trees, those new little fun trees that I am obsessed with, they're such a fun ability. Every time that those fade away, you will get 5 seconds now off the cooldown of Incarn Tree of Life, whereas before it was 4 seconds off. So you're just going to be cycling your Tree of Life a lot more often. All in all, a minor change, but a very nice one. I'm pretty sure this will line up some cooldowns just a little bit nicer, help you now that some of your cooldowns line up better, like Flourish is a 1 minute cooldown, and now Convoke is a 1 minute cooldown, or vice versa. Now Flourish is a 1 minute cooldown. This getting even more cooldown reduction, you'll probably be able to see this come down to about a 2 minute cooldown, whereas before it was a little above 2 minutes. So it's just a way to clean it up a little bit, but all in all, just a very good change. I mean, any kind of buff is a good buff. So now moving on to my spec, Mistweaver Monks, we're seeing some changes, some buffs, and then one change that I've seen very split in the community. For the most part, it's positively received, but for me, I don't know. I don't know. I never played when it was like this before, but I've seen a lot of people asking for this. So basically, Healing Elixir was a little potion that you could have up to 2 charges with. They took 30 seconds to recharge, but you could press it off the global cooldown. So you could press it while channeling Soothing Mist or while casting a Vivify. You could channel it or press it at any point in time, and it just healed you for 15% of your max health. I liked it in its current iteration because as the healer pushing keys in Mythic Plus, it was always nice knowing that I could always have up to 30% more health than is showing on the screen, which would help me know, like, if I'm taking, say, the Halls of Infusion, third boss, for example, if I'm fighting it and everyone's at about 50% health, I know that I could probably apply hots to 2 of the DPS, pop 2 healing elixir charges, and then start spamming Vivifies into the 3rd DPS and know that we're better than all at 50% health. I knew that these healing elixirs, I could use them to kind of supplement my other healing in place of another cooldown. However, they're just making it more new player friendly, I guess, because I know that they really want to, they've been making some changes, like some sneaky changes in the past that are really trying to make Mistweaver more accessible to new players picking up the spec, and just taking away one more of their buttons is one way that they thought was very good to do so. And you know what? I'm actually excited about this. So it used to say drink. Now it says you consume. Look, I get it. Drinking kind of says that you do it yourself. You take the shot yourself. But now you're just going to consume one of your 2 stacks of healing elixir whenever you drop below 35% health and aren't CC'd. It'll heal you for the same amount, but basically we will not press the button to get the healing. This will just be a passive effect. It is now a passive effect that heals you whenever you drop below 35% health. So in some ways it's good, because there were a lot of people that kind of just forgot that they had this button. I'm sure the mental load that you are under at all points in time and current retail WoW, it probably happened a lot where people would just die forgetting that they had this one extra button. It's kind of like when in raid you die because you forget to use your warlock cookie. Sure, this kind of falls under that category, but now you don't have to think about it. It will just happen. But as someone who was not one of those people that always forgot about it, I loved this spell, and I had just recently started playing with it and really pushing keys with it. I don't know, I kind of liked the agency of deciding when this button happens, when this little chunk heal happens to me. But I do appreciate the fact that it's being taken off of my hands, sure. So I'm excited to see how this plays. It's just one less thing, once again, to think about, and it's one more thing that will make the average player, the average Mistweaver, more tanky, I guess, if you want to say it like that. Obviously not more tanky in the sense of taking less damage, but just topping themselves up more quickly. So all in all, a fine change. Excited for it because most of the rest of the player base is excited for it, and I kind of just, I trust those guys. So next up, let's go and talk about some more changes that are coming, and it is to some more Soothing Mist talent. So coming into 10.2, Soothing Mist is getting buffed, But basically what they're doing is they're now buffing Summon Jade Serpent statue to match that. So now it is getting about a 40% buff to its healing. Your Jade Serpent statue's direct healing. So let's go ahead onto the PTR. Let's put a Jade Serpent statue down and let's swap to our combat log, which I guess you guys can't even see, but let's heal this guy. Well, let's heal ourselves. So we're healing ourselves for 6,000, and so is our Summon Jade Serpent statue, I guess, is right there. And then also another change that's coming, I'll go ahead and show it while I have the screen pulled up, is Unison, the talent where our Soothing Mist now, it'll heal someone near the target that we pick. So we're going to Soothing Mist to target, and it's going to kind of make a little web and cleave off onto another injured ally nearby. Basically, they have extended that range. They have quadrupled that range. It is now 40 yards. So I'm going to Soothing Mist myself. And then you'll see it pick another target to also heal, and you'll see it not just hit this little jester right here, this other cat here. It'll probably go off and hit some of these guards, hit things that are far away. So all in all, a sick change. So here I am Soothing Misting myself, and you see it now goes super far. Look at it hitting that guy. I mean, like, such an amazing change. This inherently is not a buff. It's not buffing how much healing your Unison is going to do. However, it'll have more options to choose from. Now having a 40-yard range for your Unison healing will just allow it to not miss as much. It's not gonna pick a full health target as much when that's the only option. It can reach out to range now. If you're healing your tank, it can reach the range player. So all in all, a great quality of life change. You'll get a lot more value from your Unison. You'll get a lot more value from your Summon Jade Serpent statue, which is a keystone talent. So all in all, big thumbs up, big quality of life improvements for Mistweaver players as a whole. All right, next up is Preservation Evoker. Now, Preservation Evoker has kind of gone under the radar in the past. Now, some people might kick me for saying that, but basically a lot of power is still in Rewind. Rewind is their major cooldown. It basically takes however much damage your group has taken in the last couple of seconds, and you will get 40% of that missing health back. It's kind of, in a lot of ways, it's like Revival. It's an instant AoE heal everyone in the raid, but it scales off of how much damage you take, how much damage you get chunked by, so it's really good for raid progging. But basically all they did was they changed it. Now instead of healing back 40% of the damage that you took, it will heal back 33%. So instead of 40%, you're going to be healed by a third of all damage you took in the last 5 seconds. So just kind of bringing it back down to the rest of the abilities, because as you know, in 10.2, they're really trying to level off all the AoE healing, trying to make it to where more people are going to have to spot heal in the raid. So just trying to reduce big sources like that, but Rewind kind of went under that radar. Now it's brought back down to size. And then also every time they've done that thing where they scale up the incoming damage in raids and then scale up our stamina, this also has kind of dodged those too. So honestly, it's a sad day for the Preservation Evoker community. I love Rewind. I think it's such a sick ability, but I do kind of see how some of the recent changes, this is one of the spells that's kind of, like I said, just dodged the banhammer recently. So it sucks, but it kind of just makes sense. Now, what doesn't to me make sense is the Spirit Bloom buff. Basically what they did was they buffed this Spirit Bloom, which is, if you don't know, it's a spot heal, but the longer you channel it, the more allies it's going to heal, or the longer you empower it. I'm so sorry. Coming into 10.2, they actually buffed this spell, and now they're basically just reverting it. So they gave it, I think, a 25% buff in the original 10.2 patch notes. Now it's being nerfed back down to that recent level. So honestly, all in all, this is stupid. Honestly, if you're gonna nerf Rewind by honestly a pretty big amount, I mean, if you think about 7% of all the damage everyone's taking that off of your major cooldown, that is brutal. That is brutal. And then to go and then nerf one of their other only AoE spells, their only AoE healing spells, I don't know. I am a big fan of both of these spells, so I think they could have gone in this current PTR iteration just nerfing Rewind and then testing the waters and then nerfing Spirit Bloom down the line if you need to. But to me, I'm just not a fan. And then also there's this general change for PvP players where they basically gave it Disintegrate a little bit of a buff in PvP only. All right, next up, let's bounce back to what we were originally talking about, what we started this video off with, and that is Resto Shaman. We started off talking about their tier set and how it's going to be changing, but now they're going to be seeing a slight nerf to one of their talents. And I say slight, but it's actually a pretty major major nerf. It's a 33% nerf to one of their talents. So Ancestral Awakening, whenever you critically strike with one of your spot heals, your Healing Wave, your Healing Surge, or Riptide, which if you remember, Healing Wave, Healing Surge, both are a major part in their rotation because of their tier set. And then same with Riptide, it's just they're hot, it gives a lot of healing, and you're going to be spreading those around. So since these are all just basically core to their current play style, they're nerfing Ancestral Awakening. It says whenever those critically strike, you're going to summon a spirit to aid you that will instantly heal the lowest percentage health friendly party or raid target for 10% of the amount healed by that critical strike. So all in all, you were just, since they're spamming these buttons so often, since they already stack crit, you were just seeing this actually add up to a fair amount of healing. It was only 10% of the critical amount, but that does add up, especially when you're spamming those buttons so much. So really just tweaking these numbers down. I think, like myself, I think a lot of people were kind of surprised at how good the Shaman tier set is, so they're really trying to adjust that. I don't know, same with Preservation Evoker. I think they kind of were a little heavy-handed. Maybe not heavy-handed is probably the wrong word, but I do think that the tweak to the tier set was very good, very warranted. But I don't know, I think maybe let that tweak ride out and then test Ancestral Awakening being nerfed later down the line, just like I said with Preservation Evoker. All in all, this is a major nerf. If you only put one talent node, you'll see 10% of that healing, and then if you put 2 points, you'll see 20% of the healing. But yeah, this was seeing pretty good returns in raiding especially. So I don't know. All in all, not a very exciting time to be Shaman. But all in all, I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about these changes for Shaman. Personally, I just think that they could have gone without this change right now. But like I said, it's a lot of throughput from just one talent, or I guess technically 2 talent points in the same node. So I guess we'll just have to see how this plays out and see if this puts them too far down below the other healers, or if it kind of keeps them in line with where they're at. I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see how it plays out. All right, next up, the last 2 healers that we have left are Holy Priest and Holy Paladin. Now, I'll be honest, these are very difficult to read when you're not used to like this terminology, but I'll try my best to decode these. However, these will all be down in the description down below. So Holy Priest, they're getting a modifier to their, I believe it just says the effective spells are Prayer of Mending. They're just buffing Prayer of Mending by a little bit. As you know, it used to work with their tier set, now it does not, so they are less incentivized to press Prayer of Healing. I guess just trying to add some more power back into that spell. And then next up is their Mastery is actually seeing a nerf, and I'll be honest, this is the first time in a long time that we've seen a Mastery see a change like this. Now, Holy Priests are known for stacking their Mastery because their Mastery is, it basically all their spot healing applies a hot, and that hot is their Mastery, and you see them get a ton of value out of this in raid. So it's kind of sad to see it get this change. However, it's honestly, I don't think it's the end of the world. I really don't. So as you see here, it used to be your spot heals would do 9% of the healing, of the Mastery healing, over 6 seconds. But now it's 8%. So it's being nerfed by about 1/9 of its power. So I guess 11% nerf, but it'll happen faster. So this will probably net out to be honestly not that much of a difference, since you're gonna see, since it does its healing in a less amount of time, you'll probably see a lot less of this healing be lost to overhealing. However, that hots, the longer they are, usually the better they are in raid scenarios due to ticking damage. So all in all, this really does suck, and I you know, my heart goes out to the Holy Priest mains. I hope that this is not lasting. I hope it doesn't make it into live when 10.2 finally hits. But yeah, they thought that since the Mastery is such a major part of their playstyle, they really wanted to nerf it. And I don't know, to me, it was one of my favorite parts of the playstyle, was that your Mastery was just a hot you leave behind. I always thought that was cool. So let me know what you guys think of this change if you are a Holy Priest main down below in the comments, because I'm excited to hear what you have to say about this. All right, and then next up you have some talents being changed. So Pontifex, I hope I'm saying that right, but critical heals from your flash heal and heal, which as you know, this class spams a lot in raid, especially in their current iteration now that they've moved to even more of a spot heal focus in raid. Critical heals from those spot healing sources will increase your healing done by your next Holy Word spell by now 20%, stacking up to 2 times, which for those of you who play Holy Priest, you probably know what is a holy word spell. So yeah, pretty sick buff there. So honestly, I'm excited about that. I think that's sick. I believe it works like that. I mean, it says holy word salvation, it says holy word spell. Let me know if they just at some point nerfed that and made it not work with holy word salvation, because as far as I know, that does work. So all in all, super sick buff there, especially because they did just nerf salve itself. And then next up, even more nerfs to their mastery. Like I said, I am a huge fan of their mastery, but they said Prismatic Echoes, which was a talent that would just buff the healing done by your mastery. Now, instead of going 1.6%, 2 points, 12%, it's 1.4%, 2 points, 8%. So just more gutting nerfs to their mastery. And then Trail of Light. So whenever you cast one of your spot heals, your flash heal or your heal, it used to say 18% of that healing is replicated to the previous target you healed with either heal or flash heal. So as long as you're spamming those buttons, you'll just see a lot, you'll just leave a trail. You just will. You'll leave a trail. But now they are nerfing that. If you put 1 point into it, you only get 13%. If you put 2 points into it, you get 25%. So all in all, pretty not exciting changes to Holy Priest. So I really think that they're kind of smacking Holy Priest upside the head in 10.2. They're really trying to push you into Disc Priest, it seems like, in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think down below. But we have one more change, and that is to Power Word Life. Now this is their execute heal. It's on the Priest talent tree. So Disc Priest, this was a huge this filled a void in the Disc Priest playstyle where they just lacked a button that could spot heal one person from 10% up to 80%. Power Word Life is perfect for that. So it used to read that you would heal for a certain amount at all times, but if they're below 35% health and you press this button on them, not only would it go from a 30-second cooldown to a 10-second cooldown, but it would do 5 times that healing. But now they've basically simplified this button. If you press this button on someone who is not below 35% health, it will not work, and you just get that max value at all times. So really good quality of life as someone who does play quite a bit of Disc Priest. If you go to Power Word Life, someone who's desperately in need of healing, and they use like a lock stone before that Power Word Life hits them, then you're just kind of SOL. You're just shit out of luck, honestly, because you would then have to wait 30 seconds for this to come off cooldown again, and then it just would do not a very efficient amount of healing. So now, all in all, very good change. The only downside is that it will now always be a 15-second cooldown, but honestly, we take those. Big win here, in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. All right, last but certainly not least is Holy Paladin. As you see, as always, there has just got to be a giant wall of text whenever you talk about Holy Paladin and changes coming to the class. So as you see here, I'll let you guys scroll through this, but there are a lot of changes coming to the modifiers of a lot of their spells and to the Holy Paladin passive as a whole. But to put it simply, that big wall of text under Holy Paladin, their healing was decreased by 3% coming into 10.2, but now it is going to be decreased by 5%. However, like I said, they are adjusting some of the numbers elsewhere, but all in all, still just keep on bringing the nerfs to Paladin. It's a sad day for Holy Paladin, so I really feel for you guys. However, I really don't think I still don't think it's doom and gloom just because of how strong that class was. But then there are a lot of talent changes coming to Holy Paladin as a whole. So Aura Mastery, as you know, it would buff whatever aura you chose by 12%. Now it is only buffing by 9%. And that applies to Devotion Aura. So party and raid members, this is the one that would reduce everyone's damage taken. So now it's just a big nerf to Devotion Aura for Paladin. So honestly, horrible. As someone who raids with a Paladin in my raid group, I don't like that. I like to stay alive personally. And then they are nerfing Merciful Auras, which is the talent that you can take below your Aura Mastery, which basically just adds healing to your Aura Mastery. So it's listed down here, yes. So your auras will now restore slightly more health whenever you press Aura Mastery to 3 allies within 20 yards every 2 seconds while it's active, but you now do less healing to people. It doesn't reduce the amount of healing that you do, but it buffs the amount of healing you do now by a less amount. So all in all, a very weird adjustment to the power level of Aura Mastery. I think they just want to nerf the overall throughput the spec is doing, but they're also nerfing its actual overall power of devotion aura. So not very excited to see how that plays out, but maybe the discussion was going to be how many discipline priests and how many, you know, holy paladins do you see in a raid group, and then hopefully the rest of us can get into a raid group. But now maybe this will bring them back down to size, especially in the big race to world first pushes. I still think aura mastery on a devotion aura is going to be necessary to survive certain spiky damage instances. Honestly excited to see how this change happens, but not excited to play alongside it. And then next up, Barrier of Faith. So this is a shield that you could put on an ally. Usually you would just spam this on the tank whenever it's off cooldown, and then any amount of healing that you do from your Flash of Lights, Holy Shock spells over the next few seconds, it would store that and then give them another shield. It would give that shield every 6 seconds. Now the change coming to Barrier of Faith is now you're only going to be every 6 seconds applying 25% of that stored healing instead of 50%. So just nerfing that lasting shield, that reapplying shield. Honestly, this is going to hurt them in Mythic Plus the most, but I don't know if any class can survive some nerfs in Mythic Plus, it's going to be Paladin. They have shown that they are resilient. Now Blessed Focus, this talent is not seeing any play, and you'll see why. So Blessed Focus says you can only have your Glimmer on one target at a time, which, as you know, your Holy Shocks, which you spam, whenever it's off cooldown, you can put it on as many targets as you want, and it works very well with their new ability Daybreak. Having it only active on one target, although now they're buffing it, it'll do 25, it used to do 25% increased healing, now it'll do 1.4 times its healing. It's still just, I don't think anyone's going to take this. Maybe like PvP players will take this in 2v2s, but you're just losing so much value, especially from Daybreak, that I still just don't think people are going to take this. Now, Hand of Divinity, you were seeing this as a way to extend your Tier's Deliverance very easily. They're basically just nerfing the power of this spell itself. So as you see here, it used to improve your next 2 Holy Lights by 80%. Now it's only going to improve the amount of healing that they do by 40%. So just nerfing this ability, like I said, they use this very easily to extend Tier's Deliverance and just do a lot of spot healing. So all in all, a pretty big nerf, but you have to remember that they did just buff their Holy Lights healing. And then, like I said, we went over the Merciful Auras change, now Saved by the Light. This was kind of like their cheat death. When an ally with one of your beacons of light is damaged below 30% health, they absorb the next, now you're seeing this modifier here, basically the amount of shield or health absorbed that they would get is going to be multiplied. As long as I'm reading this formula correctly, it's basically a 50% buff to that health shield that you're putting on them. So just keeping them alive. I mean, look, if Spore Cloak's shield was bigger than the Saved by the Light shield, then Saved by the Light was not doing its job. So now they're just really giving that massive shield saving into Paladin. So all in all, I love this change. I think it's so sick, and Saved by the Light is just such a cool, like, if you just step back and look at the lore of this talent, it's awesome, it's sick, and I love that they are buffing it. So all in all, very weird changes to the Paladins. I'm excited to see how this plays out. A lot of text, but hopefully I simplified it enough for you guys to understand it, and make sure and correct me down below if I'm wrong or if I misrepresented one of the changes. But I really studied these changes and wanted to get them to you guys in a digestible sense, because I know if you're like me, you are trying to really sit down and think, what healer am I going to main in 10.2? And just knowing, being able to keep up with all the changes that are coming at you guys constantly, like weekly changes at this point, that's my job, and I really wanted to kind of relay this information to you. So if you enjoyed this video, then make sure and like the video on your way out, and make sure that you are subscribed. You guys have been amazing in pushing this channel and pushing it further and allowing me to live my dream of being a content creator. So thank you guys so much. Make sure and click both those buttons on the way out, but also comment down below what you guys think. And if you've watched this far, just type the word Ebon Toes. I'll know what you mean, and I thank you so much for watching this far into the video. But guys, that's gonna do it. That is all the changes that are coming to healers. I hope that your class was one of the ones seeing the buffs. If not, just swap to Mistweaver. We are always being buffed until one day we're just gonna fall over the edge and be completely broken. But thank you so much, guys, for all the support, and I will see you guys in the next video. I am really excited for 10.2, and I hope that you guys are as well. I have plenty of content coming your way, so make sure that you're subscribed. But guys, thank you so much. Oh, also, big shout out to my Patreons, guys. If your name is on the screen right now, then you are hard carrying this channel. You are literally personally making my dream come true. So I thank you so much. Shout out to my Patreons. If you want to join them, that link will be down in the description, along with all the patch notes, everything that I went over in today's video. But guys, like I said, that's going to do it for this one. I'll stop rambling on. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, take care.